Okay, so Parshas Kisisa begins on page 484. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Lemor. Kisisa is Rosh B'nai Yisrael Lifkudehem. When you take a head count of the Jewish people, V'nasnu ish kofer nafsho la Hashem bifkodosam. Each person should give an atonement when you count them. V'lo yevem negef. There will not be a plague bifkodosam. So that's a strange thing, you know. If you count them, there might be a plague. See what that means in a second. Let's see one more pasuk. Zeyitnu kol over ala pekudim. Those who are going to be counted will give machatzis a shekel b'shekel hakodesh. They will give a half-shekel coin. Esrim gera shekel machatzis a shekel truma la Hashem. Now, what's going on over here is that first of all, there's a count. And Jewish people do not count 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't count a room by pointing and counting. What we do is the standard way to do it is Hoshia es amecho varech es nachal esecha, which has 10 words in it. You could also make a motzi lechem min haaretz if you want. That also got 10 words. Baruch atah Hashem elokeinu haolam motzi lechem min haaretz, but then you're a piece of bread. So so the standard way of counting to see if we have a minyan, that's usually where you get it in shul. To see if you have a minyan is Hoshia es amecho varech es nachal esecha. Now the reason we use that pasuk, which incidentally has 10 words, coincidentally, is because that pasuk says, save your people, Hoshia es amecha, and bless your people, which is the opposite of the curse or the plague that could happen if you count. So like everything else in Judaism, there's nothing coincidental in Judaism. So we use a pasuk that says, Hoshia es amecha, deliver your people, varech es nachal esecha, ureim v'nasem ad olam, elevate them and promote them forever. Now, why is it that a count, you have to count the Jewish people, and then they have to give an atonement for their souls when you count them, and there shouldn't be a plague? I mean, what's so bad with counting 1, 2, 3, 4? What's so bad about it? So there are a couple of ideas that are contained over here. First of all, the idea of a census. Anytime there's a census, a count is a result of a change in population. Now, a change in population comes about because of one of two things: either people are born or people die. Now, you realize, remember, we go back to what we said previously, that the machatzis shekel is going to be used for the Mishkan. According to many commentaries, this takes place, this parsha, this idea takes place after the sin of the golden calf. Remember, we talked about how there's no order in the Torah. Ein mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah. There's no chronological order based on how it's written. The chronological order sometimes is reversed. So many commentaries say, I told you that several times, there's a fundamental machlokas. Did this take place before or after the golden calf? So according to the commentaries that say it took place before the golden calf, it's very easy to understand. You see, I'm sorry, after the golden calf. It's very easy to understand. Before, when the Jewish people got to Har Sinai, they reached a point where there was no more death in the world. They had reached the point of perfection of the world. They brought the world back to the original state of what's called Adam Harishon Kodam Hachet. They reached the state of perfection of Adam before the original sin, where there would have been no death in the world. Adam before the original sin, there was no death in the world. Everything was fixed up. After the Avera of Adam, then God said, okay, you're going to have to die and go return to the earth from whence you've come. And then the Jewish people go through history. They get to the golden calf. At that point, there's no more death in the world. What restores death to the world? Worshipping the golden calf. At the point they worship the golden calf, they've brought death back to the world. And therefore, they have to atone for it, because the only reason we need to count you, or at least half the reason we need to count you, is because there's death in the world. The population changed for two reasons. They changes because of birth, which would have happened, and it changes because of death, which would not have happened. So half the reason for the population change is because of the sin of the golden calf. Therefore, what coin do you give? Not coincidentally, a half-shekel coin. Everybody gives a half-shekel coin, because that's half the reason for why there's a population change, and that becomes an atonement for the Jewish people, number one. Number two, the half-shekel coin represents what else happened as a result of the Chet HaEgel. What else happened as a result of the golden calf? What did Moshe Rabbeinu do? Smashed the tablets. He broke the tablets. So we call it breaking them in half. He didn't break them in half. They broke into pieces. They broke into pieces, but the broken coin, the half-shekel coin, represents the luchos, which were now broken. As a result, therefore, that becomes the atonement for Jewish people. Now, even more than that, you see, what the idea of a count is, when you count something, anytime you count something, 1, 2, 3, 4, what are you showing when you count by number, 1, 2, 3, 4? You're showing that something is important. You're showing that something has prominence. Because that's why you're counting one marble, too. I watch my kids used to count marbles. They count, thousands of marbles. There's a great way to keep boys active, by the way. Get them a big bucket of marbles, let them count them. They're always counting the marbles. They count the marbles, and every once in a while, a sister walks into them, tips over the bucket, and every day guys start to count again. Sister gets hit, which is also part of the fun, and then they got it. So a count, when you're counting $100 bills in your wallet, 1, 2, you're careful how you count it as you count it out. So the Israeli cab driver once, I was sitting in the cab with the guy, and the guy says to me how much it was to my neighborhood. So I gave him, he told me it was 70 shekels, whatever it was. So I paid him, I was on the way there, and I gave him a 200 shekel note. So he takes the 200 shekel note, he puts it in his pocket, and he says, "No, sorry, I don't have change," and he gives it back to me. Okay, I'm holding to it. Then he looks at me. He waits a second. He goes, look at the bill that I just gave you." So I look at the 200 shekel note. I look at it as a counterfeit 200 shekel note. He had a counterfeit one in his pocket, which somebody had passed to him. So he gave me the counterfeit note, and I made his day because I looked at it, and he was able to show something to get somebody to think that they got the 200 shekel note. So he gave me back my regular 200 shekel note. When I got home, I paid him. But I was thinking to myself, one second, this guy's got, I don't know what he's going to do with that counterfeit 200. I didn't know if I should say something or not. So I said, do you want me to take that into the house? I could destroy it for you. He goes, no, I'll find a good use. He says, don't worry, I won't use it on a Haredi. But so when you're counting money, you're looking at every time you give somebody $100 bill these days, they hold it up to the light. One, it's prominent. Now, anytime anything is prominent, you are subject to an ayin hara. You could be subject to an ayin hara. You know what the ayin hara is? The evil eye. A person should never be too ostentatious, because people could give you the eye, and they could actually, the eye means they're somewhat jealous or resentful of your good fortune. And that's why Jews are always very, very guarded about their finances. If you say to a Jew, how'd you do this year in business? He says, well, it was okay. That means he had a booming year. And if he says, well, things are tough, that means he's making upwards of 7 figures. And if he says, it wasn't such a good year, that means he's down to about $600,000 a year. And if he really looks bleak, then you know that he's only earning an average salary. That's how Jews are. Jews are very guarded, because you're worried about the evil eye. Now, what the evil eye is, you always hear about this ayin hara. Even the Sfardis have the chamza, the high five that they have, that's supposed to ward. Ashkenazim don't have it, no. That's a Sephardi. There's a Sephardi thing. It's based on some Kabbalistic tradition or other. Ashkenazim don't have it, but the Sephardi often have it in their cabs. They have it in their houses. It's called the chamsa, what we call the high five. Which is supposed to ward off the evil eye. A mezuzah is better, but they have that's actually a mitzvah. But all these things. What is the idea? By the way, in the Arab neighborhoods, what color is most prominent when you go through Arab neighborhoods? It is green off blue. It's almost like a turquoise color. They believe that wards off the evil eye. That's why you say in Sfas also there's a lot of that color. The Arabs believe that wards off the evil eye. So there's a concept of an evil eye. Let's understand what it is. What does it mean in ayin hara? How could it be that I buy a new Maserati, and you looking at my Maserati, you could actually cause me some sort of harm. So the answer is like this. It's not just that you gave me the eye from some sci-fi movie. What it means is like this. Who is it that you generally are resentful of? You're generally resentful of people who are ostentatious, people who are gloating, people who are showing off. That's what triggers off. A guy who you like, somebody who's humble. The Svarms say, the only trait nobody is jealous of is humility. Everybody loves a humble person. Everybody loves a humble person. Everybody wishes good for a humble person. We're happy for him. Because he's not flaunting. He's not putting it in other people's faces, so to speak. So what Rav Dessler explains is that if you do something ostentatious, people look at you and there's a certain resentment. What that resentment does is it causes your file to be open in Shemayim. In heaven, they open up your file and they recheck, so to speak, to see, does he really deserve such good or not? In other words, when you trigger off the resentment, you're doing something that's triggering. It's not just that I'm a resentful person. You're actually doing something to trigger the resentment. And by you triggering the resentment causes your file to be open. And then there's a review up there. Well, you got good. Do you really deserve such good? Therefore, we always try to keep it low key. We try to keep things low key. You want to hear something remarkable? You know, it says, Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. You've heard it. Everybody's been singing Misha, 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 which, by the way, that's a tune I don't think anybody really likes, by the way. It's kind of like Happy Birthday. You know, I don't think there's anybody who really likes Happy Birthday. Nobody really likes that. Just the person whose birthday it is because they know there are gifts coming. Other than that, nobody likes the niggin itself. Now, but that comes from a statement in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Misha nichnas adar marbim b'simcha. It says it's a Talmudic statement. It's interesting, the Talmud also says that when the month of Av comes, we reduce our simcha. Now, what's interesting here, and I wondered about this for years. I only got an answer to this question, a real solid answer. First solid answer I ever got, I got this year. I saw in a sefer this year. When it comes to the month of Av, the Gemara is very clear about how to reduce your simcha. You don't listen to music, and for 3 weeks you don't shave, and then you have the 9 days, and during the 9 days you don't bathe, and you don't eat meat. Then comes Tisha B'Av. You know, there's a downward slide when it comes to our simcha, very, very clearly prescribed what it is that we're supposed to do to reduce our simcha. When it comes to Adar, it says, B'shenichnas Adar, Marbim B'Simcha. That's all it says. It doesn't say what you should do. It doesn't say, okay, day 1, amusement park. Day 2, amusement park with vodka. Day 3, all of the above plus ecstasy. It doesn't say that, and it doesn't say that exactly. Just tell me how to do it. I'd love simcha. So it could be that the Gemara just trusts us. You know, when it comes to sadness, the Gemara has to tell us how to be sad. When it comes to simcha, we'll figure it out on our own. It could be that that's why. You know, simcha we never have a problem with. So there's a deeper idea. The idea is like this. You see, during the course of the year, when a person is too happy, you know, what are you so happy about? You know, if somebody's happy, it's like, what are you so happy about? You know, and then again, you could trigger off a little bit of resentment. You're walking around, you know, just with a song on your lips, happy as a lark. You know, what have you got that I ain't got? You know, that could trigger off resentment. But the month of Adar, you know what the constellation of Adar is? There are 12 constellations. You know what the constellation is? The sign for Adar is fish. What are the fish called in the?
Pisces.
What are they called?
Pisces.
Pisces. Okay, so they're called Pisces. I'll call them fish. And the fish. The Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan was a very beautiful man, very handsome man, very beautiful. The Gemara says Rabbi Yochanan used to go, and he would stand by the mikveh when women immersed in the mikveh. So when they come out of the mikveh, they could look at Rabbi Yochanan, and then they would have beautiful children like him. That's what the Gemara says. That's what Rabbi Yochanan did. That's what the Gemara says. So they said to Rabbi Yochanan, aren't you worried about the evil eye? Aren't you worried about an ayin hara? People are looking at you, beautiful man. You know, aren't you worried? So Rabbi Yochanan said, no, because I come from the tribe of Yosef. The tribe of Yosef is not prone to ayin hara because they're compared to fish. It says, V'yidgu l'rov b'kerev ha'aretz. It says, Ephraim and Menashe will be like fruitful like fish. Remember the bracha Yaakov gave them? They will fishify in the land. V'yidgu l'rov b'kerev ha'aretz. And since they're like fish are not subject to the evil eye. Fish are multiply in abundance. They're covered by a layer of water, so you can't get a real direct look at the fish. And the fish are above the evil eye. So Rabbi Yochanan said, I come from the tribe of Yosef. We're immune to the evil eye. So when it comes to the month of Adar, you could show your happiness. You don't have to worry about anybody. You are protected in the month of Adar from the evil eye. You could walk around, you could be happy and upbeat and smile, and then anything we do externally affects the internal mood. Do you know that they tell airline stewardesses who are in a bad mood, they tell them to start smiling. Smiling affects your mood. They tell airline stewardesses if they're in a bad mood when they go to work, start smiling an hour before your job. Before you get on the plane, start smiling, because a smile actually affects your internal mood. When a person walks around smiling, it actually affects you. till you get on an El Al plane with a bunch of Jews, then the smile goes away no matter what you do. But up until then, they once had a what do you call it? Plane was landing here. I think TWA or Delta, one of the planes was landing in Israel right around Hanukkah time. So they said to all of our non-Jewish customers, we would like to wish a Merry Christmas, and to all the customers standing, we would like to wish a Happy Hanukkah. The Jews are up already, So the stewardesses, you can imagine what the stewardesses go through. But they say a smile affects, when you laugh, smile, and you do something externally, that affects your internal mood. That's the idea. That's why they give the what do you call it? The machazis a shekel. Now, I don't remember if we pointed this out last time. Take a look at the second line. Kisi says Rosh B'nai Yisrael Yifkudeim. I think we mentioned this. V'nasnu, and they shall give. Take a look at that word v'nasnu, second line, third word. Take a look at that word v'nasnu carefully. Say anything unique about it? Look at that word v'nasnu, second line, third word. V'nasnu, they shall give. Same letters backward and forth. Do you know what that's? What's your name? Scott. Scott. Do you know what that's called in English grammar? Close. What did you say? A palindrome. It's called a palindrome. Palindrome is a word that reads backwards and forwards the same way. The word v'nasnu is they shall give. So over here is the lesson. Remember, they're giving machazis a shekel coin. This is a form of tzedakah. V'nasnu, they will give. And when you give, you get. Remember we spoke about that? So when you give, it comes back towards you. V'nasnu, it goes one way and you're going to get back the other way. Part of tzedakah is the promise from God. You won't lose out by giving tzedakah, number one. Number two, look at the word machatzis in the second pasuk. They give the word machatzis. Okay, look at the word machatzis, the fourth line from the top, fourth word on the line, machatzis. Now, take a look. What's the middle letter of the word machatzis? Tzadik. Tzadik, which stands obviously for, what's the first word that comes to mind when you think tzadik? Tzadik, tzedakah, a tzadik, tzedakah, it's all the same word. Okay? Now, look at the two letters on either side of that tzadik. Look at the two letters nearest to it. What do you get? On one side there's a ches, the other side there's a yud, which spells what? Chai. Chai, which is life. Look at the two outside letters. Mem and a tuf, which is death. Right? So tzedakah brings life closer. Tzedakah, remember we spoke tzedakah, tatzil mimavet. Tzedakah saves from death. Right? Tzedakah brings life closer, and it pushes death away all the way to the ends. Right? Another one of those interesting coincidences in Torah. But just one second. Now turn on ahead to Parshas Pinchas. Turn to Parshas Pinchas. The Chai, take a look at the word machatzis. Look at the letter before it and the letter right afterwards. Fourth line, fourth word.
I'm looking at the word, but where's the Chai?
There's a ches in front of it. In front of the tzaddik, there's a ches. So look at the letter right afterwards.
I think I've got the wrong thing.
What does that word mean?
Machatzis shekel means the half-shekel coin, which they're about to give. But the tzaddik is tzedakah. Ches and yud are close to the tzedakah. Ches on one side and yud on the other, which is chai. And mace, which is death, is on the outside. Okay? Now, turn to Parshas Pinchas for a moment. Turn to Parshas Pinchas. It's on page...
876.
Oh, I wanted to say it. 876. 876, okay? Now, on page 876, we begin with the Parsha of Pinchas. Now, if you remember the story of Pinchas, the prince of the tribe of Shimon, a man named Zimri ben Salu, was consorting with a Midianite woman. And as a result of what he was doing, there was a plague in the Jewish people. People started dying. 14,700 Jews started dying. Until Pinchas came along with the spear, and he made his point. Pinchas came along, and he killed the two of them, and that put an end to the plague. Okay? Pinchas put an end to the plague by killing those two people. That's the end of the last parsha. Now look at the top of page 876. Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemor. God speaks to Pinchas. Everybody see that, 876? Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen heshives chamasi. He turned back my wrath. He turned back my wrath. Take a look at that word chamasi, fifth word on the second line. Look at the word wrath. Look at the two middle letters. Mace. Look at the two outside letters. Chai. That life is farther away. When God's upset, when God's in a state of wrath, So there's death is closer and life is farther away. You see that, Mike? And when God is, you see where that is? On 876. 876, second line, fifth word. Fifth word on the second line. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen heshives chamasi, he turned back my wrath. Look at that word chamasi. The two middle letters are mace, death. Death is close together. Two outside letters are chai, is life. When God's in a state of wrath, so to speak, so then death is closer, life is further away. Then you give tzedakah, tzedakah tatzil mimaves, tzedakah saves from death, machatzis. When you put tzedakah in there, that's something I noticed during the Torah reading last week. Just kidding. Just kidding. That was something that the Vilna Gaon says. Just wanted to see if you're paying attention. Yeah, if it's a Torah reading, I'm lucky to notice the Torah reading itself. That is the idea that the Vilna Gaon points out. That the word machatzis, you see, life and death are closer together and farther apart, depending on what we're doing.
But what does machatzit mean?
Machatzis means half. That's the half-shekel coin that they're going to give. They should give a machatzis a shekel, the shekel hakodesh. Okay. Now, even more than that, the idea of giving a coin. Everybody's going to give the same coin here. Everybody's going to give. When they take a census, everybody's going to give a coin. This is an extremely important idea. Everybody gives a half-shekel coin. That means the rich man can't come along and say, well, count me with a 10. No. You get a half-shekel coin, and the other guy gives a half-shekel coin. Everybody gives a half-shekel coin. They count the coins, and then instead of a head count, which could bring a plague, they count the coins. Now, part of the idea here is, and this I think is vital for us to remember, there is, let's call it an objective standard and a subjective standard. Again, this is something that people have a lot of trouble with. In Judaism, there's what's called an objective standard. So for example, if there's an honor to be given out, let's say the third aliyah to the Torah. Who gets the third aliyah to the Torah? The most prominent Torah scholar. A Talmid Chacham gets the third aliyah. He gets the honor. If there's an honor to be given, a Talmid Chacham gets the honor. If somebody has to lead the benching and there's no Kohen around, so who leads the benching? Again, the Talmid Chacham. If there's only enough tzedakah in the communal fund, and there are two families that need tzedakah, well, we have to have some way of determining who gets it. So the halacha says, a Talmid Chacham takes precedence. A Talmid Chacham takes precedence. That's the pinnacle of success in the Jewish world, is to become a Talmid Chacham. In the secular world, perhaps it's to become a doctor, to become an athlete, a performer, whatever the society considers the pinnacle of success. In Torah life, the pinnacle of success is to become a Talmid Chacham. And therefore, on an objective level, we give the Talmid Chacham the precedence. Okay? However, in the presence of God, that's only because we need to know how to run a society. You need to run the practical implementation of societal rules. So we need to know who's at a higher, who outranks who on a societal level. Okay? But in the eyes of God, we don't know who's doing their job better. In the eyes of God, it could be a simple Jew who will get more reward than a Torah scholar. Because if the Torah scholar was born with a certain potential and he fulfilled 80% of his potential, and a simple Jew was born with less potential but fulfilled 90% of his potential, he occupies a higher place in the world of truth. Because ultimately we're graded on potential. A guy who's a Baal Tshuva, and then he pulled himself out and became a Torah observant Jew, so objectively, he's going to know less than a guy who's been born and raised in Mea Shearim. He's going to Panovich, and he's just sheer hours he's accumulated more. And in a societal level, he outranks you because we have to go with an objective standard. But in the eyes of God, you don't know who's doing better. In the eyes of God, you don't know, because in the eyes of God, if you fulfilled your potential, you overcame your challenges and rose to where you've risen to, so then you occupy a front row seat, or at least a seat in front of that person in the world of truth. So there are two standards. So the Torah says, you know what, give a half a shekel coin. When we count you, give a half shekel coin. Because right now we're counting each individual Jew. Each individual Jew right now is worth the same amount. You could be wealthy, you could be prominent, you could be a hawker, you could be everything. In the eyes of God, each one of you is a half shekel. You don't know who's worth more. So everybody gives a half shekel coin over here. Then in the world of truth, God will let us know who occupies a higher position. Okay. Now, there's an interesting idea here that Rashi brings down in Pasuk Yud Gimel in the Rashi. It's the right column. It's 4 lines from the top in the right column. Okay? 4 lines from the top in the right column of Rashi. It says, Ze yitznu, this is what they should give. Says Rashi, Her alo, everybody see it's the right column of Rashi, 4 lines from the top. Ze yitznu, Her alo kimin matbea shel esh. He showed Moshe Rabbeinu like a coin of fire. Umishkala machatzis shekel. The Amar Lo, and he said, Kazei Yitnu. This is the coin they should give. He showed Moshe Rabbeinu a coin of fire. Now, I understand that when it comes to the menorah, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand how to make the menorah. If you read the Torah's instructions of the menorah, it's very elaborate, very complicated, very difficult to make the menorah. Hashem had to show him the menorah, and then he said, okay, you know what, just throw a block of gold into the fire, and out came the menorah. Okay, because the menorah is difficult to make. Okay. A machatzis, a shekel coin. It's not that difficult to know. Everybody's running around with half-shekel coins. Why does God have to show him, this is the coin, shows them a coin of fire, this is the coin, this is what they should give? Why do you need you don't know the machatzis, a shekel coin? Just give me just saying, listen, I want you all guys, everybody should give $10. Here's a $10 bill. That we know from day one, we know what a $10 bill looks like. Who's on a $10 bill? Who's on a $10 bill? Hamilton? Hamilton. So who's on Franklin. Franklin's on 100. You should know, Usher, I was once in England. My first trip to England, and I had some dollars, and I said to the guy, could I go I need to change the dollars into English pounds, could I go into, the guy said, no, nobody's going to change dollars for pounds for you, and to me it was a big shock, because in Israel you go anywhere, you can pay dollars anywhere. That was a very big shock to me that the English don't worship the dollar, that they think the pound is worth more than the dollar. I said, nobody's going to change dollars. You had to find a money changer. That was a cultural shock for me. There's anybody in the world who doesn't absolutely worship the dollar. So, but we know what the dollar looks like. I know what the pound looks like. I did make a faux pas once when I was speaking in England. I was trying to give an example. I said, imagine you have a 100-pound note, and they don't have 100-pound notes in England. It only goes up to 50. They only have 50-pound notes. So I just went, imagine you have a 100-pound note. The audience was politely just looking at me like this. You American fool. You can read it in their eyes. But everybody knows. So why does Hashem have to show Moshe Rabbeinu a fiery half-shekel coin? What do you say, Binyamin?
Maybe Hashem was emphasizing that this shekel and only this half-shekel coin. They can't give more, no less.
Okay. That he could say. That he could just say half shekel and no more than half shekel. Why does he have to show him the coin?
Words do,
Pictures speak louder. Okay. But Moshe Rabbeinu is pretty sharp. Moshe Rabbeinu is pretty sharp. If you say to Moshe Rabbeinu a half shekel, not more than a half shekel, and nothing but a half shekel, he'd get it. Why does it show him a half shekel coin of fire?
I guess maybe it's more symbolic that it's not just money. Why would money atone for your sins? It has to be
you close?
Spiritual version, I guess.
In other words, the money should be given. Fire always represents what? Represents some sort of enthusiasm. Give it like a coin of fire. Give it enthusiastically, like you have a fire. Give it like you want to give. Don't give it because somebody's twisting your arm over here to give. I told you a story of the rabbi. The rabbi gets up in the shul. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have to build a new wing to the shul. We've expanded, and I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is we already have the money. The bad news is it's in your pockets, right? So sometimes to get people to give is a little bit difficult. So here the Torah is saying they should give it with enthusiasm. They should realize that this is for the mitzvah of building the Mishkan. It's going to be used in the Mishkan, and it should be a coin of fire. That's what the commentary suggests. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
So this is all happening in the desert in between Egypt and right. So when they're talking about a shekel, it's not talking about an actual currency. It's probably talking about some sort of unit of silver, or the shekel was the currency that was being used in Egypt.
Here's a good question. In the old days, coins were a combination of initially the Gemara talks about this. Coins were actually a combination of a denomination and a weight. It had both factors. The Gemara even talks about if you get, let's say you get a half shekel coin, but it's been scraped down and it doesn't weigh as much, and a guy doesn't want to take the coin. I'm not taking this. It's like almost like a torn
Yeah,
bill,
less silver.
a torn bill that's been. So the Gemara talks about a guy who isn't willing to accept a coin that's slightly shaven. He has the right not to accept it, but the Gemara calls him a nefesh ra'ah. He's what we'd call in English, he's a jerk. You know, he's making a big deal out of it, but he has the right because it's not the weight that it should be. I think the United States moved off the silver standard. Isn't that true that they moved off the coins used to be silver and they moved off because people were shaving coins down?
Yeah.
So they moved down to whatever the coins are made out of now.
Silver became worth more than
That for sure it is. The penny right. It costs more to make a penny than a penny is worth. You know, which
a quarter from 1969 or something like that. The last time they used silver was worth like $4 or something.
What on the actual silver,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So they moved off the silver standard because of and the coins because people were saying. But that's what these coins were definitely. That's clear from the Gemara. The coin was a combination of a denomination, but that denomination apparently had a certain range of weight.
I got you. So the reason I asked the question is because like the shekel is the Jewish currency, but how could they have already minted currency? Like a.
Don't know technically how they did
I'm
it.
assuming that it's just a measure of a certain weight.
Well, apparently it's.
Stamped into coins.
So I can't answer that. I can't answer. I don't know. I don't know exactly how it certainly has the weight component. That's for sure. It has, as opposed to nowadays. It's certainly got the weight component. It could be its pure weight. It could be.
Right.
But
or the alternative is that then otherwise that the shekel was the currency used in Egypt, and then.
Hard to
Because
say.
otherwise, where would they have gotten
The Machatzis shekel.
Where they press all these shekels?
It says by Avram Avinu. It says by Avram Avinu when he bought the cave. So I think it says he gave to Ephron.
Didn't they bury the gold and silver in the desert?
It says way before this. It says that when Avram paid Arba Meos shekel kesef. He paid Ephron, and that was in the land of Canaan when he bought the cave, and that's way before that. This is Arba Meos shekel. So apparently that shekel coin was around already. Whatever.
It was like the international currency.
Whatever it is. It's interesting because I'm just thinking now the word shekel and the word shokel in Hebrew, shokel means to weigh. So there's probably no coincidence that shekel and shokel are the same are the same word. They're no coincidence. I never thought of it before, but shekel is shokel. It's got to weigh a certain amount. Don't know. In any event, that's what they have to bring, and this will be an atonement for the Jewish people. Now, take a look at pasuk page 4, Perik Lamed Aleph, pasuk Aleph. We're skipping on ahead. God gives the command of. By the way, I just want to show you something. I just want to show you on page 486. Just take a look because if you take a look in the middle of the page, this has to do with the oil that they're going to make. And what the oil started out with incense. The way they made the oil is they took a certain incense, certain spices, or what's the other word? What's the word for spices? Another word for spices, the flowers that are spice.
Potpourri?
No, there's a word like besamim. What does he call it? Spices. No, they're okay. So take a look. I guess spices. We'll have to use that. So what they made is they took spices. And they took these spices, ground them together, and they poured in the oil, and they soaked it. And then they the oil out. They put in water, and they burnt the water. They set it on fire so the water boiled out. Then they're left with this oil that has a very good fragrance to it. This was the oil that was used to anoint the people, anoint the kalim, anoint everything. Now, I just want to show you one thing over here. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe lemor. God says to Moshe, it's in the middle of page 486. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe lemor, v'ata kach lecha b'samim rosh, take various spices, mordechai, which the Art Scroll translates as pure mire. I'm not sure what mir is or mire. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right. But it's called mordechai. Okay? Now, take a look right next to it. Go parallel across into Unkelus's translation. And if you find it, it's over here. It's on Pasuk Chaf Gimel in the translation of Unkelus over here. Pasuk Chaf Gimel in Unkelus. Okay? If you find it, show the person next to you. It's very interesting. Onkelos says, translates like this. Ve'atos savloch, take for yourself, busmin, resha, take certain spices. Look at the next two words. Meradachya. Say meradachya fast. Sound like anything? Mordechai. Mordechai. This is an allusion to Mordechai in this week's parsha. Meradachya. Mordechai. Isn't that interesting? Purim comes out, and the Gemara says that here is where Mordechai is alluded to in the Torah. Because Mordechai is meradachya, and it just so happens to be that this parsha comes out in the week of Purim. So this is an allusion. I mean, obviously there's a deeper idea here, but why it refers to Mordechai. But Mordechai is alluded to here. Okay, tomorrow we'll go back. Tomorrow we'll continue with the building of the Mishkan itself and who builds it and how they go about building it. All right.